What is going on, everyone? My name is Jared, and welcome to the Best Seat of the Track, your pre-race show to get you prepared here for every NASCAR Cup Series weekend. Like I said, if you're looking for a pre-race show, you have come to the right place. Joining me this weekend is the one, the only, the Frontstretch podcast host, Davey Segal. Davey, it is great to have you on this show. First question I want to ask you about is the coveted Martinsville hot dogs. I have not been fortunate enough to have been there. It's on a bucket list of mine to have a Martinsville hot dog. How many have you had this weekend?
So far, I've had 5, but the day is young. As of this recording, the night is young, so to speak. I think I put my over-under, somebody put my over-under at like 12 and a half. So I would need to go pretty hard today to get up there. I don't think I will because I got a long drive home tomorrow and I got to work tomorrow morning. So I might go a little bit easy, but I'm at 5 right now. So respectable, I would say.
That's pretty respectful. I think there's some of these drivers have packed down like 20 to 30 hot dogs too. So
I would if I could. Well, I guess I could, but I choose not to.
Yeah, but let's get into the racing aspect of it too. First things first, I want to talk about 2311 racing. It's kind of interesting to note the parallelism of Trackhouse racing in 2311. Last year, they started as a new team, each with a driver that's kind of had something to prove, Daniel Suarez and Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace did get a win last season, Suarez did not. Then you look to this season, Trackhouse Racing on a roll with Ross Chastain. Suarez has been performing well, but 2311 has been kind of just there. Kurt Busch kind of performed well, 3 top 10 finishes, but in the last 2 races at Richmond and Coda, terrible finishes dropped him from 5th in the points comfortably in the playoffs to outside in 18th. Bubba Wallace, I'm a little bit more concerned about. His best finish outside of restrictor plate race is 19th at Fontana. And I'm going to play real quick what he said to us about his season so far.
This first part of the year. Surprised I got teeth left. Many times I've been kicked in it these last few weeks. But that's the part of racing. You never know what to expect until it happens. And it can be really good, it can be really bad. So that's why you just kind of manage your expectations. You know, I always tell you, I was told, never let the highs get too high or the lows get too low. And so you just kind of ride the wave and whatever happens, happens. But you always show up ready to play.
Denny seems to, be pretty stressed about it or hard spoken about it. He's like, we got to fix this. We got to stop the bloodletting or whatever. Is it something that you just think will take time, or do you think that you got a real issue over there, or is it something that this is a growing program and you got to be patient?
It's a growing program. Obviously, we're behind with our penalty from Coda. And so just trying to get the right people in place. And, I think we have a great flow chart of what we got going on, the right people in the right place. But it just all comes down to you doing your job, I'll do my job, and we all do it together. And so it's just mistakes that happen that we got to clean up. So race teams have mistakes. They seem to have a little bit more than others right now, but it's still early in the season. We'll be fine.
Now, Davey, like I said, you were there and you asked them that question too. What do you think are the struggles with 2311 racing? Why they're not performing as well as compared to Trackhouse racing?
I just think it's growing pains of a new team. I mean, and we've seen with the next gen car too, right? You can hit on it maybe once or twice in a 1 or 2 week span like Trackhouse has. But then some weeks, Richmond, Trackhouse had speed, sure, but their finishes weren't really indicative of where they ran, and they weren't really that great. Whereas the weeks before that, Suarez was running well, leading laps. Ross Chastain obviously won a race there at Coda. 2311, they're still in their second year growing as a team. And Denny Hamlin said as much too in the media center, right? I mean, he said he won the race at Richmond on a high, right? Gets out of the car, looks at the pylon, and he says, pardon my French, and I won't say it, but what the, what? Because he knows that they have work to do, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's probably not going to happen, in the next couple months here. It may not happen by the end of this year. I don't think that there's one thing going wrong, so to speak, with 2311. I mean, sure, the wheel coming off of Coda and Boobie Barker being on vacation for a month, that doesn't help things. I think it's going to take time, and it's going to take time for other people to adjust to the next car. It's going to take time for Bubba Wallace to get his footing under him. It's going to take time for Kurt Busch to adjust and learn with a new team. I just think it's growing pains of a new team, and it's growing pains of a new car.
I think that's a pretty good spot on analysis. I got to add, too, that Toyota has kind of struggled right out of the gate, too. Joe Gibbs hasn't performed as well, and 2311 is a satellite team, so if Joe Gibbs isn't performing to the expectations they are. 2311 is not. So we'll see how it's going. Like I said, Bubba Wallace, Kurt Busch are starting higher mid-pack between, I think, 11th and 20th, but we'll see how it goes. Now, Davey, we're going to get into a pretty interesting conversation, and we're on two different spectrums of the side. But this race at Martinsville, it's 400 laps. The last scheduled race, I looked this up, at Martinsville that was less than 500 laps was 1955. So it's been a while since they ran a scheduled race less than 500 laps. And it was kind of interesting. You had Kevin Harvick on the podcast. Make sure to check out the podcast. That, he said this is going to be a thing of the past of 500-mile races, which kind of concerns me. And I think there's two reasons why, like I said, races feel longer. First, I'm going to call it track fatigue. We've had a lot of tracks we're going to week in and week out with all three of the series. 20 years ago in the Camping World Truck Series, 8 of the 22 races on the schedule were the same race weekend as the Cup Series. This year, it's 20 out of the 23. The only race weekends that were the Truck Series is not with the Cup Series is IRP, Knoxville, and Mid-Ohio. So we're watching the same racetrack. Like I said, we had Pocono 500 to 400 miles. Then you had Xfinity and truck race. You're watching about 800, 900 miles in the same weekend at the same track. Schedule diversity between different tracks, running tracks, but at a different race weekend, I think was going to help alleviate that long feeling of 500 miles. The second point, and which is more concerning, especially with this next-gen car, is how slow they are. Considering this, I compared the 2006 Spring Richmond race to the 2022 Spring Richmond race. The 2022 race was about 45 seconds shorter of a race time compared to 2006. Yet, 2022 had five cautions, including the stage bricks. 2006 had 11 cautions, and about the, like I said, correlation of caution laps as well, too. We're running races at a lot slower pace, and I mean, if you look, it's and across the board as well. 2014 to 2020 Las Vegas, it's almost 2 seconds slower a lap that they were running in 2022 compared to 2014. I mean, you even look at Phoenix from the season finale to the spring race, they're about a second slower. I'm more concerned because when you have these seconds that are added on per lap, and you put that for 300, 400 laps, you're adding 10, 15, 20 minutes, and especially when you have a long caution break, it's going to take a while. Davey, what are your thoughts to speed it up? I know you like to shorten races, but do you think this concerning fact of these cars are actually running a lot slower than they were about 10, 15 years ago?
No, I don't think it's that concerning, to be honest. I mean, that's not going to change. We've had all this conversation surrounding the package the last couple of years, and get rid of the downforce, increase the horsepower, make these cars go faster, put it in the driver's hands. For the last few years, we've had that debate every single week, and now that that's mostly gone, which I think is a good thing, the focus can be on the racing itself. And I agree with you. I think that the cars should be faster. I think that if you're in the Cup Series, the Cup Series cars should be faster than the Xfinity cars, should be faster than the ARCA cars. They should be the top of the top. But the fact of the matter is they're not. I don't think that's going to change this year. Probably not going to change next year. The next gen car is not going anywhere. So at the risk of sounding like we just got to move on and deal with it. We just got to move on and deal with it. Like, I think in a perfect world, you'd have these cars at 900 horsepower and absolutely screaming down the straightaways and having all the rear camber. You know what I mean? But I don't think that's going to happen. That's not realistic. In terms of the length of the races, it's a really interesting correlation statistic that you pulled out, because I don't know why that correlation is what it is. Having all those more cautions 15, 20 years ago, but the race still being the same amount of time. I don't know if that's a television factor. I don't know if that's a cleanup factor. I don't know what that is. My gut would tell me it's the former and television and commercials. That's kind of drawing a lot of the speed in terms of how things get cleaned up when you go to caution. Obviously, stage breaks are a television created thing, but I don't think that it's really an issue. I mean, the cars are still going fast. The races are still fun and good to watch. I think at the end of the day, the fatigue comes from the fact that we've been doing the same thing for so long. And that's why, it's good to see these changes in the schedule, these changes in race length at Martinsville today. this should be the tip of the iceberg. Kevin Harvick talked about it with me on the podcast. Alex Bowman did earlier this year on the podcast as well, and Planet asked Joey Logano this week. 500-mile races, 500-lap races, I don't think that they really have a place in the sport anymore, barring your Coke 600s, your Southern 500s, your Daytona 500s. And that's not just because of the attention span of people like us that are younger, that want to do other things. It's just the landscape of sports. Like, all those comparisons to 2006, those are great. That was the peak of the sport. You know, it was great times. This is 2022. Times change. You got to keep up with the Joneses. You got to change with the times. You can appreciate what was in the past and look back on that, but you can't build your foundation presently and moving forward based on what was happening 15, 20 years ago. That's going to set you back. So I think in a way, you know, it's good to look back on that and say, well, how do we speed things up? How do we make things more concise? Because everybody's for that, right? Efficiency. But I think at the same time, you need to kind of build your own identity in the here and the now instead of looking back.
Like I said, there's some good points too, and I think it's just the big common factor is just the efficiency of the races too, and it's pretty interesting correlation whether you look at, you know, bigger tracks like this at like Talladega or Daytona or Martinsville. They're still running. I think the Martinsville pole from, like, you know, 7 years ago to there was about still 7/10 off. It's just, you know, that's a difference right there. That's noticeable after, you know, 400, 500 laps. But it's a pretty interesting point. You know, debate that's not going to be settled just on this video. But like I said, we brought up some interesting points on there. But we're going to get into our race picks, Davey. Like I said, let me get up to the standings. I have been kind of in a cold streak right now. Adam Cheek was on last week, picked Denny Hamlin, and of course he won. Kyle Busch had a decent run, finished 9th. But I'm still giving you the pick. I need to get, like I said, I had a winning streak starting the season, and now I'm kind of gotten cold. But let's see if you can keep going for our at-track guest. Who are you picking to win and taking the grandfather clock home?
I'm not confident in this pick. I will say that, because I was all aboard the Truex train heading in here, and then he stood about 20 feet to my left over there yesterday and said, we missed it. We don't have the speed that I envisioned coming in here. I'm not comfortable. That's not really an endorsing, you know, a glowing endorsement of your race car. So I was going to pick Truex and be boring, but I'm going off of that. I'm not going to go in the JGR camp. I'm going to go in the Penske camp. Somebody who has run really well this season, has run really well at Martinsville. And I think that curse of leading, 9 races over 100 laps and not winning any of them, Ryan Blaney is going to get your grandfather clock tonight.
Oh, yeah. That's a pretty interesting pick. I was looking up that we had our winners so far, only 2 of them have started inside the top 10, and most of our winners have started between 12th and 16th this season, which is pretty interesting that Penske's clustered right there. I'm going to go with a little bit more of a momentous pick, too. He's already won this season, and I think he's, like I said, he's starting to turn that corner. And he won here on the Truck Series race. I'm going to go with William Byron. Might be a riskiest pick. Larson's out there. Chase Elliott's out there, too. You've got some Toyotas, you know, Hamlin and Busch. But I think it's William Byron that gets it done. He has the momentum, and it's all about seat time here. Davey, it was great to have you on this show. And from everyone here in Frontstretch.com, make sure to subscribe, like our content, and make sure to go to Frontstretch.com for more. Have a great race weekend.